Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about Bandit de Robert Piguet, which is a fragrance that came out in 1944, done by Germaine Cellier, which unfortunately I don't know many things about. I know she's very popular, she's grown in popularity in recent years. A lot of people are talking about the great works of Germaine Cellier, and I would be very curious to smell other things done by Germaine Cellier. The only two things I've smelled done by her is Bandit, which I am going to call Bandit from now on. And also Fracas. I've been looking for Vent Vert by Balmain, but I didn't find anything. It's quite expensive also, so yeah, I don't think I'll be able to find one soon, but who knows. It would be quite interesting to delve into the greater works of Germaine Cellier, but for now we're going to be talking about Bandit. My own bottle is a batch from 2015, so it's, you know, reformulated. It's, you could say it's the, I guess it's the current formulation. I don't know if they reformulated it again. There was a bit of I don't know, it disappeared from the Robert Piguet website a few months ago, and this is what prompted me to buy it, because I thought it was being discontinued. Apparently it's back and stock. They also have Bandit Supreme, which I haven't smelled. If you know anything about that, do let me know. It's a good thing I have Bandit, the, you know, original modern version. It was a few years, it was back in 2020 when I first smelled Bandit, and it was I had a sample gifted to me by Nicoletta Tomsha, and when I first smelled it, I remember I thought, oh my goodness, this is Kouros, but Kouros like on steroids, right? And what does that mean? It's, well, first and foremost, it's a leather chypre. The leather is so, it's a very aggressive leather, right? But we'll talk about how it smells in a moment. What hit me about it is the sheer, you know, audacity, the animalics, the aggression of this fragrance that actually roars. And the fact, it was not lost on me that this was a fragrance marketed to women, and it still is, which is very, very interesting. And again, it's a testament to how these, you know, male and female or women's fragrances, it's just an illusion, it's marketing, it doesn't mean anything quite at all. But I could imagine this fragrance being always quite audacious, and I think this fragrance was quite loved and it was quite popular, but never, you know, as popular as maybe Chanel No. 5 or Opium, which I've just finished filming. I think it got quite the fan base, and I can imagine why. This is, as I said, very audacious, and it's very, it reminds me of the, even though it's a fragrance from the 40s, it's definitely a fragrance, sort of an avant-garde almost fragrance, which targets emancipated women. And this is something I read on Fragrantica, and it's stuck on my mind. It's targeted for women, for emancipated women, with the same vibe as Shalimar and Abanita and Cure de Russie. Not in terms of smell, those type of women from the turn of the century who smoke in public. That's all the women could do back then to be emancipated, you know, smoke in public, which is such a dreadful, scary statement. But anyway, I think Bandit is not unique, and hear me out. Bandit belongs to a group of fragrances because it's quite similar to other fragrances in its family of leather chypres, because now when I smell Bandit, I don't necessarily think of Kouros anymore. But I think definitely of Cuir de Russie. Then I think of Cabochard, which I think Cabochard is its closest relative. Then when it comes to the leather, I think the closest fragrance I can think of is also Knishe 10, and the way this harsh leather is, presented here. But also, if you stretch that family enough, and if you think of the whole trajectory of the fragrance, from start to finish, you could end up also thinking about Kouros and definitely Antaeus. With Antaeus, I think, being a bit closer in terms of patchouli and labdanum. The main players in this leather chypre are galbanum, ylang, leather, jasmine, patchouli, oak moss, and vetiver. And I know I mentioned labdanum in there, and it's probably true because I do detect some labdanum in there, which is very dark. This fragrance starts very green. It's almost like Cristal Eau de Toilette in the opening. It's like you're not prepared when you smell the very first few seconds of this scent. You get a bit of galbanum, you get a bit of greenery, some mild florals, and some aldehydes. But this doesn't prepare you for what's coming next, because in its trajectory, Bandit just darkens and darkens and darkens and becomes more animalic and more aggressive in that leather. It's honestly the most aggressively leathery fragrance that I've smelled. And even though it's so similar to Cabochard, I do think this one's my favorite, just because of this, the audacity of the fragrance. It's just so unapologetically strong, harsh, dark, bitter leather, which is something I really, really love. Now, in this progression, it runs through, I think the notes listed are so correct, because it starts with galbanum, which is this light, bright green. Then it becomes rather pissy, and it follows through a floral heart, which is mainly jasmine. But I would say it's more, even though she probably didn't have this in mind, she created this gardenia accord, which is plush and earthy and mushroomy and more delicate than just simply a jasmine. Like an earthier, cooler, damper, darker version, of a jasmine. Then it follows through to your typical chypre base, which is labdanum, oak moss, and patchouli. And they cite also the vetiver. And to me, it almost borders on a barbershoppier Antaeus. But now that I think about it, it kind of reminds me, together with its floral heart, of Francesca Bianchi's The Black Knight. And whenever I thought of Francesca Bianchi's The Black Knight, I always thought, well, maybe that one was referencing Antaeus. And I'm sure that's true to some degree. But I think that fragrance might be referencing Bandit, now that I think about it. It's quite close to that. So for people who rather want a modern take, I don't know why you would want that, but if you want a more modern take on this leather chypre, you might want to try the Black Knight, because that one is very beautiful in itself. I think Bandit, to me, I think is my favorite of this whole genre of leather chypres. Another favorite of mine is Guerlain's Derby. When it comes to the animalics, I think they're very close in nature. I especially refer to the stable, hay, dry, fecal, pissy, stable kind of smell. Horse stable. The way Bandit is constructed, as I said, I think is just more interesting, and I think it's got a lot more things to offer. Not to mention, it's a very, very strong fragrance. It's so potent. It lasts such a long time on the skin. Doesn't overpower. It's never too much, but it's definitely not for the faint-hearted. You know, it's definitely worth a try. But I'm glad that they brought it back. You know, I'm glad it's not discontinued. When I got my older version, I wasn't necessarily looking for an older version. It doesn't matter, as I said, it's just the current formulation. But I am glad that they still produce this scent, because it's, you know, it's iconic, and we shouldn't be without it by any chance. All right, so this was my my thoughts on Bandit. If you have any other questions, do let me know in the comments. And until next time, remember, fragrance creates memories, and may yours be happy.